Let's get one thing straight. The real danger in life isn't the person who openly frowns at you, rolls their eyes, or argues with you in public. Number, it's the one who smiles warmly, laughs at your jokes, and maybe even brings you coffee in the morning while secretly wishing you were gone. That might sound dramatic, but life has a way of proving that truth is often stranger and far scarier than fiction. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. Right now, somewhere in your life, there could be someone quietly plotting your downfall, and you'd have no idea until it's far too late. You see, hatred is obvious. When someone doesn't like you, it's usually written all over their face, in their tone, or in their actions. You can prepare for that. You can defend yourself. But the kind of intent I'm talking about hides behind a mask polished, polite, and Instagram filtered. It's disguised as friendliness, kindness, even support, and that's what makes it lethal. By the time most people recognize the signs, they're already standing in the damage zone. The friendships have soured, the reputation has cracked, the safety net is gone. All while the person who orchestrated it stands there, still smiling, acting innocent. Now, this video isn't here to make you paranoid. It's not about living in fear or doubting every handshake and smile. It's about survival through awareness. It's about learning to see what's really happening beneath the surface so you can protect yourself before it's too late. Because I want you to imagine something. You're walking into a room filled with people you know, friends, co-workers, neighbors. You make small talk, share a few laughs, maybe swap stories about your weekend. But somewhere in that room, there's one person who's not laughing with you. They're taking notes. Not on paper, but in their mind about your routines, your relationships, your weaknesses. And while you think they're on your side, they're quietly figuring out how to move you off the board entirely. That's the kind of threat I'm talking about. It doesn't wear a villain's cape. It wears a friend's smile. And the scary part? Psychologists have studied this. People who operate this way are often more effective than open enemies because they trigger no alarm bells. We've been conditioned to think danger comes with a raised voice, a slammed door, or an angry email. But sometimes it comes dressed in kindness, because kindness is the perfect camouflage. So in this video, we're going to break that camouflage apart. I'm going to walk you through 5 chilling, but often overlooked, signs that someone in your life isn't just unfriendly. They want you completely gone. And I'm not talking about guesses or wild conspiracy theories. These signs are backed by real behavioral patterns, things psychologists and security experts have documented again and again. We'll talk about the silent observer who studies you like a project, the quiet saboteur who poisons your relationships without ever confronting you, the false friend who earns your trust only to weaponize it, the escalating aggressor who tests your boundaries in subtle but dangerous ways, and the patient predator who can wait months, years, just to strike when you least expect it. But before we dive in, I want you to think about this. Has there ever been someone in your life who seemed too friendly, too helpful? Someone who always seemed to be around, but never for any clear reason? If that person's face just popped into your mind, you might need to watch this video all the way through. Because awareness is your first line of defense. And once you learn to recognize these signs, you'll never look at friendly the same way again. So, are you ready? Let's begin. Let's start with one of the most chilling and dangerously overlooked signs that someone in your life might not just dislike you. I call this one the silent observer. And no, this isn't just a nosy neighbor scrolling through your Facebook posts or that coworker who accidentally overhears your conversations. This is something far more deliberate, far more calculated. The silent observer doesn't just watch you, they study you. They memorize your schedule. They analyze your routines. They collect little details about your life with the kind of precision you'd expect from military reconnaissance, not casual curiosity. It starts small. They know your coffee order, even though you've never once talked about it. They start showing up at the same park, the same gym, the same grocery store, always at the same time as you. At first, you tell yourself it's just coincidence. But here's the thing about coincidences. They have a way of stacking up until they're no longer coincidences at all. I once heard about a woman named Christine, a mid-level manager in a quiet suburban town. She had broken up with her boyfriend months earlier, and at first, she thought maybe he was just having a hard time letting go. But then, no matter what she changed her gym, her route to work, even her grocery store, he still managed to run into her. There were no confrontations, no threats, just quiet, consistent surveillance. Her friends brushed it off as obsession. But Christine eventually realized this wasn't obsession. It was preparation. He wasn't trying to win her back. He was studying her, mapping her movements, eliminating uncertainty before making a move. That's what makes the silent observer so dangerous. They hide in plain sight. And the reason we miss it is because we've been trained to dismiss subtle patterns as paranoia. We second-guess ourselves. I'm probably overthinking it, right? But predators count on that hesitation. They weaponize your self-doubt. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once warned us, never assume appearances are harmless. He taught that a wise person stays vigilant, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. When something disrupts your peace, especially in the form of a person who seems to know too much or appears too often without reason, it's time to investigate, not excuse. And here's the modern truth. Surveillance doesn't require a van parked outside your house anymore. It only takes access to your social media, a couple of mutual friends, and a pattern of habits you haven't guarded closely enough. In a hyper-connected world, it's frighteningly easy for someone to track you without ever breaking a law. Now, I'm not telling you this to make you suspicious of every friendly face. But I am telling you, if someone keeps showing up in your life without a clear reason, if they know details you've never shared, that's not fate. That's not just how small the world is. That's a red flag. So what can you do? Pay attention to patterns. Question the coincidences. And most importantly, trust your instincts. Your discomfort is not overthinking, it's insight. When your gut tells you something's off, honor it. Because here's the truth. The most dangerous people are rarely the ones who lash out publicly. They're the ones who smile politely while cataloging your every move. They wait for the moment you're not paying attention. And when that moment comes, the Stoics believed wisdom begins with clear observation and ends with decisive action. So be watchful, but not fearful. Protect your routines, guard your privacy, and remember, sometimes the scariest threat is the one standing closest. Saying nothing at all. Part 2. The Saboteur Strategy. Now, if the silent observer is dangerous because they study you in the shadows, the saboteur is deadly because they don't just come after you. They come after your world. This isn't petty gossip. This isn't someone saying they don't like your outfit or rolling their eyes in a meeting. The saboteur plays a deeper, more destructive game. One where the goal is not just to hurt you, but to isolate you completely. Here's how it works. They start small, dropping subtle comments in just the right ears, at just the right time. To your boss, they might casually suggest you've been unreliable lately. To your friends, they might imply you've changed. They never make a bold accusation that would be too obvious. Instead, they plant seeds. Seeds of doubt, seeds of suspicion. And they do it so carefully that by the time you realize what's happening, the damage is already done. Psychologists have studied this. When someone hears a negative statement about a person, even if it's later proven false, there's still a lasting effect on how they view that person. That's the dangerous power of suggestion. The saboteur knows this, and they use it like a surgeon uses a scalpel. And here's what makes it worse. They don't strike all at once. They spread it out. You might have an argument with a coworker one day, a misunderstanding with a friend the next, and a sudden shift in your boss's attitude the week after. You chalk it up to bad luck or a stressful season. But it's not luck. It's a campaign, a quiet war against your reputation. I've seen it happen. A colleague once told me about a woman, let's call her Dana, who was a rising star in her company. Her results were undeniable, her relationships solid. Then out of nowhere, small cracks started to appear. A team member stopped sharing important information with her. Her boss began questioning her decisions more than usual. Friends at work grew distant. Months later, Dana discovered that one person, a coworker she thought was an ally, had been carefully feeding half-truths and concerns to everyone around her. They never told outright lies, just enough to make people uneasy. By the time Dana pieced it together, her credibility had taken a hit that would take years to rebuild. From a Stoic perspective, this tactic is especially insidious because it attacks not your body, but your integrity. Something Stoicism teaches us to guard above all else. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But when a saboteur is at work, the obstacle isn't a challenge to grow from, it's a toxic fog clouding your path. You're forced into a defensive position, spending all your time trying to prove your innocence instead of moving forward. And the more you speak, the more suspicious you seem. So, how do you defend yourself? First, don't chase every rumor. That's exactly what they want. Instead, anchor yourself in evidence. Document everything: emails, messages, dates, timelines. If someone questions you, you'll have the facts ready. Second, keep your circle intentional. Not everyone who smiles at you deserves access to your trust. The Stoics and even ancient wisdom from Scripture remind us, character reveals itself over time, not in moments of chaos. Third, watch for patterns. If the same person seems to be at the edges of multiple conflicts in your life, always nearby but never directly involved, don't dismiss it. That's not a coincidence. That's coordination. Because here's the hard truth. A saboteur doesn't just want to see you fail. They want to make sure that when you finally fall, no one is there to catch you. And if you're not paying attention, by the time they make their final move, you'll be standing alone. The Stoics taught us that our peace depends on what we choose to let in. So protect it. Guard your reputation with quiet vigilance. And remember, sometimes the biggest threat isn't the person who confronts you to your face. It's the one who whispers when you're not in the room. Part 3. The false friend facade. Now, if the saboteur tears you down from the outside, the false friend breaks you from the inside. And trust me, this one is harder to see coming than almost anything else. We've been told since childhood that kindness is always a virtue, that someone showing warmth and attention is a good sign. But here's the hard truth. Not all kindness is real. Sometimes it's a mask, a tool. The false friend facade happens when someone suddenly shifts from being a distant acquaintance to acting like your closest confidant. It feels flattering. It feels comforting. And that's the point. They're not earning your trust, they're building access. Here's how it works. They start asking you personal questions about your schedule, your relationships, your fears, even your past traumas. At first, it seems like genuine concern. They might even share vulnerable stories of their own, so you'll open up more. But in reality, they're gathering intelligence. Every secret you share becomes another tool in their toolbox. Another vulnerability they can use. And they don't stop with you. They find ways to get close to your family, to hang around your workplace, to help with your errands. It's a full-on charm offensive, not because they care, but because they want to know everything. Let me give you an example. A man I once spoke with, let's call him Robert, went through this exact thing. He met a new colleague, Sarah, who quickly became friendly. Within weeks, she knew his lunch schedule, his weekend plans, even details about his kids. She brought coffee to his desk, offered rides when his car was in the shop, even dropped by his home just to say hi. Robert thought he'd found a genuine friend, but over time, little things didn't add up. Sensitive details he'd only shared with her began to surface in conversations with other people, slightly twisted, always in ways that made him look unreliable or unstable. By the time Robert realized what was happening, Sarah had already built a network of influence around him, using his own words as ammunition. The reason this tactic works so well is because it feels good at first. We all want to be seen, understood, and supported. The false friend offers all of that, but with a hidden ledger in their mind, tracking every piece of information you give them. From a Stoic perspective, this is where discernment becomes your greatest shield. Seneca once said, "A friend is someone you trust with your soul, but trust must be earned, not given freely to anyone who smiles and listens." The Stoics valued warmth and connection, but they also warned against rushing into intimacy. A relationship that grows too fast, too deep, without history, that's not friendship. That's infiltration. So, how can you spot the false friend? They push for personal information too soon. They mirror your language, your emotions, even your values, making it feel like you're the same person. They insert themselves into multiple areas of your life, often without invitation. They become overly available, overly helpful, overly interested. And here's the big one. Their interest is almost always asymmetrical. You share deeply. They share just enough to keep you talking. If you see these patterns, slow things down. Guard your privacy like your peace depends on it, because it does. Ask yourself, why does this person suddenly want access to parts of my life they've never cared about before? It's not about becoming cynical or closed off. It's about being wise. True friendship grows naturally. Over time, it's proven through consistency, not speed. And the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries instead of trying to rush past them. The false friend doesn't just want your loyalty, they want your weaknesses. And once they've collected enough, they'll know exactly where to strike. So yes, be kind. Yes, be warm. But be wise enough to remember, when evil wears a friendly face, it's not connection, it's camouflage. Part 4. Escalating aggression. If the false friend is dangerous because they hide behind charm, the escalating aggressor is dangerous because they test you slowly until your boundaries disappear. Here's the thing. People who harbor truly harmful intentions rarely start with outright violence. They know that if they came at you full force on day one, you'd run. Instead, they push the line a little at a time, conditioning you to tolerate more and more, until what once shocked you now feels. It often begins with subtle jabs, offhand jokes with disturbing undertones. Maybe they laugh and say, "If I wanted to, I could ruin you right now." Or, "I'd make a perfect killer because I know how to hide the evidence." They deliver it with a smirk, maybe even a laugh. So you're not sure if they're joking. But make no mistake, these aren't just tasteless comments. They're probes. They're measuring your fear, testing how much they can get away with. Let me tell you about a case that still gives seasoned investigators chills. In 2016, a young woman named Leah moved into a new apartment complex after starting her first job out of college. There, she met Adam, a neighbor who seemed a little awkward but friendly enough. He started showing up more often, offering help with groceries, making small talk in the elevator, asking oddly specific questions about her daily routine. One day, at a small building cookout, Adam joked that he'd make the perfect murderer because he knew how to get rid of evidence. Everyone laughed it off. Leah felt unsettled but told herself it was nothing. Then things began to shift. Adam started standing a little too close in hallways. He would accidentally brush against her shoulder, never apologizing. Once, He even blocked her apartment door under the pretense of needing to talk. Then came the night. Leah found a hunting knife laid neatly on her doormat. No note, no explanation, just the weapon. She went to the authorities. They dismissed it as a prank. But Leah didn't. She installed a camera outside her door, changed her locks, and began documenting every interaction. A month later, her camera caught Adam at 2 a.m., wearing gloves and trying to pick her lock, holding what looked like a black duffel bag. He was arrested. Police later found a journal mapping Leah's movements, her favorite places, and chillingly, a timeline labeled execution window. This is the terrifying truth. Violent individuals often use a pattern of gradual escalation to desensitize you. They push your boundaries in small ways until you stop noticing the danger. And by the time you do, it's often too late. The Stoics warned us to prepare our minds not in fear, but in awareness. Seneca said, "He who is forewarned is forearmed." And that's exactly the mindset you need here. Because subtle threats are still threats. And a joke about hurting you isn't humor, it's a warning dressed in laughter. So how do you spot the escalating aggressor? Their jokes are laced with threats or dark undertones. They increasingly invade your personal space without permission. They pay more attention to your reactions than to the conversation itself. They test small boundaries, then bigger ones, to see how far they can go. And here's the part people often miss. The danger isn't just in the big obvious act, it's in the dozens of little acts that made that big one possible. If you notice these signs, don't explain them away. Don't tell yourself, "I'm overreacting." Document them. Create distance. And trust the discomfort you feel. It's not paranoia. It's your body telling you something is wrong. Because when it comes to the escalating aggressor, every small violation is a step in a staircase you do not want to climb. The Stoics taught that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of awareness and the will to act on it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set a hard boundary and keep it. Part 5. The patient predator. If the escalating aggressor is dangerous because they test you in plain sight, the patient predator is dangerous because they hide and wait. This is the coldest kind of enemy. They're not driven by a burst of anger or a moment of passion. They're not interested in a quick revenge or a dramatic showdown. No, the patient predator plays what the Stoics would call the long game. Every move is calculated, rehearsed, and timed to perfection. And the scariest part? They can wait for months, even years, long enough for you to drop your guard completely. At first glance, they look harmless, sometimes even admirable. They're the dependable coworker who always offers to help, the neighbor who waters your plants when you're out of town, the friend who remembers your birthday better than your own family. They raise trust, not alarms, and that's exactly how they want it. But underneath that calm exterior, they're collecting information. Every conversation, every favor, every coincidental encounter is data gathering. They want to know your travel plans not because they care, but because they want to know when you'll be gone. They ask about your support system not to encourage you, but to see how strong or how fragile it is. They remember your routines, your weak points, and most importantly, when those weak points are likely to appear again. I've seen this play out in ways that still make me uneasy. A man I once spoke to, let's call him Daniel, had a business partner named Mark. For years, Mark was the picture of reliability. Always supportive, always on his side. Then, in the middle of a crucial deal, Daniel had to leave town for 2 weeks. By the time he returned, Mark had completely rearranged the company's structure, cut Daniel out of key projects, and secured control of the clients. It wasn't a sudden betrayal, it was a move Mark had been positioning for over 3 years. The trip was just the perfect opportunity. That's how the patient predator works. They're not waiting for their chance to fight you. They're waiting for your mistake. The one time you're too distracted, too tired, too trusting. From a Stoic perspective, This is one of the most dangerous threats because it exploits our natural desire for peace and stability. Epictetus warned that our greatest risk isn't what we see, it's what we overlook because it looks safe. When nothing seems wrong, we relax. When we relax, we stop noticing the small tells. And when we stop noticing, they move. So, how do you spot a patient predator? They seek to integrate themselves deeply into your routines or support system. They are unusually patient in building closeness, never rushing but never truly stepping back either. They always seem to know when you'll be alone, unavailable, or vulnerable. They avoid direct conflict, preferring subtle positioning. And here's the hard truth, because they're so patient, they rarely make mistakes. Which means your best defense isn't catching them in the act, it's never giving them the opportunity in the first place. That means being selective with deep trust. It means guarding your plans, keeping certain details of your life private, even from people who seem trustworthy. It means protecting your boundaries, not out of paranoia, but out of respect for yourself. Because kindness doesn't have to mean blind access. You can be generous, helpful, and warm without opening the vault of your life to someone who hasn't earned it. The Stoics taught that vigilance is not about living in fear, it's about living in truth. If you stay awake, even when nothing appears wrong, you won't just protect yourself from obvious enemies, you'll protect yourself from the ones who never look like enemies at all. And here's the bottom line. If someone's loyalty feels flawless, but their interest in your life is deeper than it needs to be, ask yourself why. Because sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one who can smile at you for years while quietly planning exactly how to take you out. So now you know the 5 signs. The silent observer, the one who studies you quietly. The saboteur, the one who poisons your relationships from the shadows. The false friend, the one who earns your trust just to weaponize it. The escalating aggressor, the one who pushes your boundaries until danger feels normal. And the patient predator, the one who hides behind time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Individually, each of these people is dangerous. But together, they form a pattern that can completely dismantle a life before the victim even realizes what's happening. If any of these signs made someone come to mind, don't brush it off. Don't tell yourself, I'm overreacting, because your instincts exist for a reason. They are your first and most reliable line of defense. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." I'd add, if it does not feel right, do not ignore it. Awareness is not paranoia, it's preparation. And preparation is what keeps you safe. Here's what I want you to take away. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to cut off everyone who gets too close. But you do need to watch patterns, guard your boundaries, and protect the details of your life like they matter, because they do. Trust should be earned slowly. Kindness can be real, but it can also be camouflage. And safety isn't built on luck, it's built on vigilance. So stay sharp, stay guarded, and stay alive. Because the truth is, someone who merely dislikes you will roll their eyes and move on. But someone who truly wants you gone will study you, sabotage you, smile at you, escalate, and wait. That's not petty, that's predatory. The devil doesn't come with horns. He comes wrapped in everything you thought you could trust. If this message hit a little too close to home, here's what I ask. Subscribe so you're always one step ahead. Share this with someone who might be in the dark, because knowledge might save not only your life, but theirs too. And remember, it's not paranoia if they're actually planning your downfall. Trust wisely. And I'll see you in the next one.